Call this council on February 14th to order. We're going to start by standing in the crowd. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Not sure if everyone knows, but second to this month, we did interview some solicitors and we did hire one. And before you get into the meeting, I'd just like to lose one of the partners. We were lucky enough that one gentleman that we did hire, his name is Christopher Griffith. He's got some issues tonight, some health issues, so he's not going to be able to attend tonight. But his partner's here, and the nice thing about the firm that we did hire, we had some excellent candidates, but we hired a complete firm, and I think it's going to work real well for the city. But Max Walton from Conley and Gallagher is here tonight. I'd just like to say hello, everyone.
So nice to be here. It's tough to fill Dan's shoes, but we're going to do our best. We've been week through our government side firm, mostly municipal work, and represent a number of municipalities. You won't see me all that often, but except for when Chris needs to be out like this evening. But he has been my friend and partner for 10 years, and he will treat you wonderfully. He's a great guy. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Can we have a roll call, please?
Council President Michael Platt,
President.
Councilperson Joseph Jay,
Here.
Councilperson Valerie Leary. Here. Councilperson Suzanne Savage. Here. Also present are City Administrator William Barthel, Chief of Police McCabe, Mayor Quaranta, and Mr. Max Walton,
Thank you.
City Solicitor, and Janet Carlin, City Treasurer.
Thank you. Approval of minutes for January 10th, 2023, regular meeting, minutes for January 24th, public hearing, January 24th, special meeting, and February 2nd, a special meeting. A motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. They're approved. Staff reports. Treasurer. Okay, okay. You do it my way. Adam.
Good evening. This is the unaudited report as of January, Treasury report as of January 31st, 2023. The total unrestricted funds, $7,214,150.69. Total restricted funds, $5,150,146.06. Total cash in the accounts, $12,404,296.75.
Any questions for the treasurer?
I think we covered a lot of questions on the 24th.
Right.
Okay. Motion to accept the treasurer's report is read.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Ms. Garland. Report from city administrator and staff.
Yes, Mr. Platt, thank you. I just have one thing for council, which is an update on Delmarva, which of course they're still working through phase 3, continuing to install some of the gas services for that phase, and then based on weather, etc., they should complete the service work by early April for phase 3 with restoration to follow. Particularly as blacktop plants open. I think we discussed that last month at council at our council meeting last month, but just to give you a current update on that. Now, I do have a meeting planned with them prior to our next council meeting where they intend to provide me with updates on future phases and scheduling and what have you. So I will have that prior to the March meeting. That's all I have, Mr. Platt.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the city administrator? Steve? Good evening.
Should be brief, hopefully. First, our report should be up on the website within the next day or two. We're having some issues pulling some data for the report, so I apologize for that, but that should be up soon. A couple of significant events over the last month. One, our unit board devices, any device conspiracy. And we're still obviously taking some time, but this is a really well and thorough. And hopefully we're not getting any more washing or the theft, so I think we've made it down here. And then the last thing I want to mention, last Friday night, our patrol officers played a significant role. They were on scene quickly, identified them, gave foot pursuit, helped the county apprehend them. So really good travelers from our part. And that's all I have.
I said about the M&T issues, checks that,
Yes, I know we're looking at some, I don't have the details, but I do
Okay.
know we're looking at something, yeah.
that, yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Mr. Murtaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Platt.
Council Communications, Mr. Day.
Quick things. I'm really glad to see that the work's moving along on the bulkhead repair, down by the wharf. It's not only gonna look better, but I think it'll be safe with the community. And also that it's beginning, the work on the boat ramp is beginning, so we're moving along and by spring. it should be-
Thank you.
I'm sorry,
Mr.
Mr. President, I should have said one thing. I think it would be remiss if we did not comment on the passing of Dave Athey. I believe Dave was our city engineer for about 11 years. I did attend his viewing Sunday. But he was a real asset to the city, and he knew a lot of the historical background of issues and problems, and he will certainly be missed.
Absolutely. May he rest in peace. Mr. Mayor. Speak up.
Good evening, everybody. Let me start with happy Valentine's Day. It is Valentine's Day. Tell Mr. Platt, I will not be your Valentine, but
Love the one you're with.
but it is also Black History Month, and I hope that all of us take time to recognize our friends and neighbors throughout the city who made contributions to our history. And also President's Day is coming up. I believe city offices are going to be closed, right? Yeah, city offices will be closed, and so check the city website for the schedule for services that week. A couple of other things, Attack Addiction, their 5K is going to be in the city on March 4th, and I will be walking and would certainly invite others to consider doing similarly. Ms. Leary, you have been instrumental in the restaurant week, and let me thank you. I saw the list and the lineups of a greater number of businesses throughout the city, so thank you for that. I think that'll be nice, and it's great to include more of our restaurants up at the farmers market and some other places. I think that's great. I do want to call to the council's attention that in the intervening weeks, Mr. Platt, I'll be in communication with you about the Board of Health. We've got some stipulations. When I was on council, we actually addressed this once, but there's another piece to this. We have a requirement. We have a licensed physician serve on that board. That was written at a time when we used to have multiple physicians living in our community. That's really not the case anymore. So I'm going to I've asked the Board of Health to proffer some recommendations. And I'll also have a nomination for your consideration. We have a vacancy there. So I'll come back to all of you about that and hopefully schedule something for the March meeting. Elections are coming up, and I know that everybody's seen some of the folks here. I've not shared this. I think I've shared publicly with several people, but my plans are not to run for re-election. When I ran 4 years ago, I said I would serve one term, And believe it or not, I'm keeping my promise. And having served for 5 years on the planning commission, 5 years on the historic area commission, I turned it over to Dave Baldini on the planning commission. He did a much better job running it than I did. I will have done my part for my community, and so I will not be running for reelection. I also want to say a couple things about truck traffic. There was a senior meeting. I really don't want to disclose too terribly much about this in Washington with the United States Postal Service about U.S. Postal Service contractors coming through Dobbinsville and Washington Park, which continues to be troublesome. They have other options, and so there's continuing discussions about asking those contractors to find a different route to go over to the Postal Service of Quigley Boulevard. I think that concludes what I wanted to share. So I just, again, wish everybody a happy Valentine's Day, and thank you very much.
Mayor.
Thank you.
I have nothing tonight. If we'd like to, we can go to public comments. Come to the podium, identify yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone.
Team, sir.
My time hasn't started yet.
No, not quite.
Did you get my name written?
Have you write your name down?
Right, I did this all backwards. What I want to discuss isn't really on the agenda, because I haven't just a minute or so, because I see how things are moving forward. In Dobbinsville, I see where the guys have located their corner points for the boundaries of that land out there for fishing pier. What I'd like to see you guys do is walk away from that. I want you guys, in the best interest and the safety of everyone, I want you to walk away from it. I believe that if the city of Newcastle would come in with the trustees of Newcastle Common, we get the state to move much faster on fixing that road by taking that turn out of there once and for all. With half of that parking lot and a portion of trustee property in the best interest of everyone, we can take that turn out of that road. And then when the state comes in and backfills this side of the bridge, like they should have did in 1992 when they did the other side, that it's held up very well, they'll have a straight run, right straight up to almost where the sign is in Dobbinsville. And I'm asking for one of you guys to at least take this into consideration. It would be in everyone's best interest to take that turn out of that road. And with a corner of trustee property, half of that parking lot, we can make this happen. Public safety should come before any recreation. And I mean that from my heart. We had a tractor trailer lose his back 2 weeks ago coming around that turn. He was carrying cars. You all know what a car carrier is, don't you? The entire trailer shot out into our wetlands. They come unhooked from the truck and shot out into the wetlands. If he was going southbound, the car carrier part that come away from the truck would have most likely killed anyone in the other lane. 3 months ago, we had a tractor trailer drop the back in the intersection of 7th and Washington Street. The whole back comes right off the trailer, right in the intersection. This is 2 incidents in a 3-month period, maybe 4 months, I'm not sure. All I'm asking you is to think a little deeper. Now that you got the boundaries, you got a much better case with the trustees, and I believe the state would move much faster on fixing that road if you join in and let them take that turn over there. And I'm hoping that you guys will at least research it and look into it. It'll be in the fire department, everyone's best interest. In 1992, they backfilled the south side of the bridge. My mother died and I cried on the bridge they were fixing in 1992. They never backfilled this side. They used some excuse about floating sand. If you had floating sand, the road wouldn't be there. That's 30 years ago. Convince them to backfill this side of the road right on up to that sign in Dalville, and your problem is over with the whole road. All they need is dirt, fill, and get the job done. They don't help you. They don't want to widen 273. They keep bullshitting us around about that problem. That's a situation down there. Let's join with them and tell them we want to get this and get it done. That's all I ask you. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Yes, Phil Gross, 1301 13th Street. First, I'd like to say the tree commission does an amazing job. As I previously said, I attend pretty much every meeting that's connected with the city and surrounding areas. But I did have a question, or at least hope to get an answer about. They had mentioned about the pots at the pier, the flower pots. They said that's out of their purview, and said to ask about a beautification committee that was once formed, but they said that they handle that. So if you could just put it on your agenda to look into, or because I know when the ship comes in and there's other events in the park, those pots having flowers or trees or something would be a plus. Secondly, the playground committee, an amazing job how they pulled the money together and connected with the city on getting the money and getting a project pretty much on board and get it going. So I do want to commend them for that. As far as the resolution 2023 -C, I read it. I'm happy to see that I guess that the city is pushing forward to secure the buildings that they have, rather than burdening the taxpayers with 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, whatever the amount is that, you know, the city claims it's going to cost. So I'm all in favor of that, except the engineering studies or plans for $40,000. I think there needs to be some more monitoring on that expense, because it just seems pretty healthy of an expense for what's needed. And I think with the Riverrise Committee, I think before you vote on extending it, one, I think that it should be for a certain period of time, maybe 6-month increments to check their progress. And two, I'd say before you extend them being active, that they have a vote to get a new leadership. I think 1-year terms or whatever, I think it's enough. And just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Terry Buchanan. I own the Weekly, but that's not what I'm here to talk to you about. I was contacted a few weeks ago by Guido Campanelli, who I understand he gave a presentation to you all on the Buttonwood Mansion, Good House Mansion. And he's been looking for some assistance to see what can be done in terms of preservation and restoration of that property. So I'm involved all of a sudden. So we're in the process of forming a 501c3 and a committee to see what can be done in terms of fundraising with Zenith Maison, because as you know, it's on their property. And we felt, Guido and I, that someone from the city, from the trust, and from probably the Historical Society should have a place at that table. It's not going to be a lot of time, but I'm just asking that you consider who you might want to have on that committee. Maybe it's from council or from PAC or whoever you deem appropriate. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a nice project, actually.
It is. And it's one of the few historic buildings outside the city center.
Anyone else? Your Honor, good evening.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Richard Cooch. I'm here on behalf of the Society of Colonial Wars, and it says I'm also speaking for the trustees for informational purposes for council, because I think it's essentially a project of the Society of Colonial Wars and the trustees of the common, but then I'll explain why I'm here. Apart from just letting you all know what's going on with respect to a relatively small but important historical project. The project essentially involves moving that 1905 stone at the southeast corner of Second and Chestnut Street, erected in 1905 by the colonial dames of the state of Delaware to recognize Fort Casimir. That stone erroneously says, but that was thought at the time that Fort Casimir was out in where the Delaware River is now. And the impetus for this project is that, frankly, that the Society of Colonial Wars is having a national meeting in May. Over 250 people headquartered in Wilton are expected to attend from around the country. A side trip to Newcastle on Newcastle Day, of all days, is planned. And the Colonial Wars, which focuses on colonial history, which 1551 Dutch Fort Casimir certainly is, was thought to be appropriate to bring all the more attention to the significance of Fort Casimir. So the plan is that and this has been approved by the Historic Area Commission, the trustees of the Common have approved it, the colonial dames have approved the moving of their monuments, and they have standing to do so. Who knows who owns that monument 100+ years later, but they're happy to have that. So it will sit atop a small base of the Colonial Wars Monument, which will recognize the recent archaeology that's been done that has discovered the actual site of Fort Casimir. It was thought to be for many years out into the Delaware River. I've been in touch with Bill Barthel about all this. I don't know what he's passed on to you, but from what you can see, recent archaeology led by Wade Katz places Fort Casimir squarely at the intersection of Second Street and Chestnut Street. So the houses on all four sides of that intersection are part of the fort, and the eastern end would stretch out toward the Delaware River, where the present signage is put up by the Newcastle Community Partnership, etc. So the trustees are very interested in this. In fact, in speaking with them, I don't see any member of the trustees here tonight, but they're very interested on this. Oh, sorry about that. Well, I'm entitled to my senior moments. I've earned them. I appreciate that. All right. You're certainly free to add anything that you want. But it'll be moved to property owned by the Trust of Newcastle Common. The exact location will be figured out with Wade Katz, the archaeologist who did the soundings, and hopefully be right at the very exterior part of the fort itself. It had sort of jagged exterior edges. It didn't last long. It was taken down very quickly after it was built. So the reason that I'm here is that Bill Barthel believes, along with Curio, that in all probability, if I'm stating it right, the stone monument sits on your property, the right of way, right on as Chestnut Street extends toward the Delaware River. And you didn't want to come and sort of lift this 1905 monument, was probably your property, without telling you. I think in all likelihood, that's is not going to be an issue, but I think this whole project will raise consciousness about Fort Casimir. The trustees are interested in that. If I may say so, I think there's even at least talk about maybe putting by the trustees, so a cement outline of where the outline of the fort might be, so you can actually see it and wouldn't interfere with grass cutting or anything like that. So now we had hoped to have this monument. We didn't start working on it. Other people are working on actually getting the monument created, but the wording has been approved by Stark Area Commission, which says this is placed on the site of the fort based on recent archaeology because of supply chain issues with respect to the right kind of stone to get. So may or may not be finished by May. Part of the plan includes the recutting of the Colonial Dames monument because it's hard to read as things stand right now. So that's it in a nutshell. I'm really just here for informational purposes. Be happy to try to answer any questions, but it's going to emphasize again, the importance of this. The archaeology was funded by the American Battlefield Trust Association. I think that's the right name, because since a few cannonballs were lobbed in 54 or was it 55, that counts as a battle. So we've got a battle right there in Newcastle. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor. Any questions for Judge Cooch?
I have one last comment, since Mr. Walton is here. He's derivatively, if I may say, a true son of Newcastle because he was for a while a law firm to Bill Quillen.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Then I got,
Anyone else?
Well, we're gonna need to formally approve that, put it on its agenda item. How does that get done?
I think, go ahead.
So put it on your next, it came up in public comment. I think the appropriate thing to do is put it on the next agenda. Right? Approval.
As a resolution now?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Anything else, Joe?
No. Be clear.
Anything else? No one else? Okay, moving on. We're gonna skip around here a little bit. We have a representative from DelDOT here to talk about incorporating the gateway additions to Delaware Street Railroad crossing improvements. So give him the floor first.
That's hard to speak to the audience. I'm also one here. The council should have a printout of this. You feel I can talk to the council members. Thank you. My name is John Murray. I work with Century Engineering. We are the firm that's hired by DelDOT to do the design of the railroad improvements. Wanted to give a quick update on the railroad improvement project. That project was put on hold for a little while. The city had made a request to bring that back into the funding. DelDOT had postponed it because of pushed it out to the funding year, farther out in the funding years. It has been called restarted. The goal is to have the railroad crossing improvement project to be constructed in July of next year, 2024. That is DelDOT's fiscal 25, but July of 24 calendar year. As a reminder, that project incorporated redoing the railroad crossing itself, putting in new warning lights, closing the 8th Street intersection and putting a signal at 9th Street, as well as putting a new traffic signal at the Portofino's Walgreens intersection and doing some paving in between. So that was the original railroad project. It was a safety sponsored project to eliminate the possibility of cars getting stopping on the tracks, making a left turn, and as well as meeting the minimum railroad safety. Last year, there was a planning study done for the city of Newcastle that had included a gateway option, a gateway treatment. That option, the one that was voted and approved, look to, as you're going into the city, you have a right lane, a right turn. That turn lane has kind of become a through movement, and it's not clear that the traffic going north should stay on the left side and not make the right turn. So for improving the flow, trying to keep the trucks and other vehicles from getting into downtown where they don't have a lot of opportunity to turn around, it was decided to try and reshape, change the geometrics at that intersection. That is the green bubble on the board in this area. It is what's on this board is very similar to what was approved at the council meeting. The other thing that would allow is for pedestrian movements, and you now can have a connection across the Delaware Street intersection, allowing for movement at the signal. So that was incorporated, but it was just a plan. When we restarted this project, the railroad project, DelDOT said, hey, let's go to the city of Newcastle. Let's see if that part of it, because it's right in the same area and it touches our project, if they would like to include that work, the gateway treatment, into the DelDOT project. So essentially what we'll be doing is creating that new right turn where the pavement is today. That would be taken out, made into green space, grass. As you can see in the diagram, it would create a little bit of a skew, a turn, to forcing the right turn, clarify the movement. The traffic signal would still be in an island there that would be reshaped a little bit, but it would also allow for the pedestrian movements and new crosswalks in the signal. This work, we at DelDOT didn't know anything, what the plans for the city of Newcastle were. So we didn't want to come up here and say, this is what we're going to do. So we wanted to present it to you, make sure that you still approve it, and then wanted to include it into this project in July of 2024. We took the reason this looks a little bit different than what was on the planning study is we took a little bit more of an engineering look at it to make sure that there wasn't any critical flaws, no drainage, no huge utilities, no right-of-way needs. We don't think we have anything that would be a showstopper, because the problem is, and this is one of the reasons we wanted to present it to you now, is we need to get back into the design process. The final plans need to be completed by the end of this year so the project can be advertised, which takes about a 5-month process to get the contractor on board and ready to go. So with that, I can open up any questions that you may have. What we're looking for here is just the blessing, if you will, from today or in the near future of incorporating this work into it. All the work that's shown on here would be paid for under the DelDOT project. The city of Newcastle would not have to spend any money for it. What the city of Newcastle would have to do is right now there's the small welcome to Newcastle sign. Any gateway treatments, any signs, any landscaping that the city would like to put, that would be on the city to erect however they see fit into that green space area or wherever. But it would not be included into the DelDOT project. Other than that, it's pretty much just a realignment of the curbs. We will be, once we have a final design, we can come out. We definitely need to meet with the emergency responders anyway. As you know from previous meetings, when this project does happen, it will close the road. It'll be just a lane closure. It will be a total detour. So we do have some coordination that will be coming. And there's always time to move things a little bit, but in general, just like to open it up to any questions that the council may have or concerns. But bottom line is DelDOT would like to add this work into the project, and if there's no concerns about it from them, we'll go ahead and start progressing.
I would like to go up and look at it to envision it a little better, to exactly how much road it's taking away.
If you're coming in, you have the lane, the blocked up, the white delineators. People were passing on the right and the sidewalk was there. So that would basically be removed as you go straight. It would just be shifted up slightly. I don't have an exact dimension, but we shifted up toward the where the island is today. The island today will still remain basically the same, but we'll be making it smaller where the sign is, where the traffic signal is, the string pole. So it's in that same area. But yes, We're not increasing the roadway at all, we're actually reducing pavement.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I think it's a great idea, but I do think we should take a look at the options that MAPCO gave us in the transportation plan and just make sure we're picking the option that we want. So again,
Yeah, and approve.
okay, through the MAPCO plan.
Correct.
Okay.
Century Engineering was the engineering on that, so we literally took that and here, the shape is a little bit different, that's what I wanted to highlight, but yeah, 100% correct. This part, there was other proposed improvements that it's not included, but.
Okay. Thank you. Clarifying.
Councilman Sawyer, anything?
No, nothing other than what already raised.
I guess this is administrator lawyer question. Do we have to go through public hearings like we did when we first started doing this? And or is it just a council vote? We normally have a public hearing on this where Del Dr. speaks about it.
Okay, well, the way we wrote the the agenda, it does say discussion and possible vote. It sounds like there's questions that council has, and I think if that's the case, then you might want to hold another meeting that.
It's time to hold another meeting. I don't know what happened.
Right.
Right. Fair enough.
Quite frankly, and we were asked to put in, excuse me, the potential for a possible vote. John had asked us to do that, but with the idea that there were probably going to be questions and that type of thing. So I think based on the comments and what have you, I think it would probably be best to have further discussion and debate about it.
What's your deadline for us to make a decision?
We don't have a drop dead date, but be looking, it falls into February. We do have to do the design, so this gets delayed until making of dates, June, July, we won't be able to get it into the project.
Okay. Fair enough.
If we
Thank you.
get, if we can, the elections come up, we can get in front of the council now. In case there are any questions we can address them.
We don't have to have a hearing, because it's not an ordinance, any other
No,
change.
Just the next meeting.
Right,
Next meeting.
correct.
Okay.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. Update on our AMI project. We're waiting on first article testing for the water meters before they can ship from the manufacturer to us. That basically is proving that the water meter will work with the design, the system design. So the expected shipping is in the next week. Originally, the electric meter install was scheduled to start on the 28th this month. But being that we don't have the water meters in hand, if we start electric and we'll have the water meter, then you pay for remobilization. So it just drives the cost up. So we're pushing that off for a couple of weeks, but it's still in the near future. So I'll have better dates as soon as we have a ship date on our water meters. So coming soon though. Hewlett Jambier project. I'm been working with the attorneys to get all the getting prepared for closing on the loan. So I expect that'll be in the next weeks. That's 18 feet of water main, 32 services, 3 new hydrants and 1 old hydrant will be replaced installed for that project. And then last, just had a quick update and a thank Commissioner Knox. 3-year terms as MSC commissioner. He's asked not to be reappointed, so he's been council's appointment for the last 15 years. So I look forward to working with council for a new appointee. And then also like to thank Mayor Quantra for his time served on the commission. It's been a pleasure. So thank you, sir. Any questions?
So this means that when this is gonna get done, that we don't have to call in meter reading.
Correct. I know, we're up to about 700 right now, and it's all manual entry, it's a lot of. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Okay, discussion and motion on resolution 2023-8. Do we have a move
So
or
moved.
second to read it? A resolution approving ARPA funds for use request from the city administrator, whereas the city. Whereas the city administrator, City of Newcastle currently holds $2,899,692.92 in the American Rescue Plan, ARPA grant from funding from the federal government. And whereas the federal treasury regulation, ARPA funds can be used for public health, economic impacts, premium pay for essential workers, replacing lost public sector revenue, investing in infrastructure such as water, sewers, broadband, and as well as various other capital expenditures. Whereas the city administrator has recommended that city council authorize the expenditures for ARPA funds grant funding for a total of $725,800 for the following qualified expenditures: a new garbage truck, $270,000. Future leasing of police vehicles, $350,000. Garbage truck compact insert for the small truck, $20,000. Police station security camera upgrade, $65,000. Design plans for bulletproof barrier storefront closure for city offices at 220 Delaware Street, $20,800. Total redesign at the office, $46,100. The total of $771,900. And now therefore, it is hereby resolved that City Council, that the city administrator is authorized to incur the following expenses to pay from the ARPA grant funds allotted to the city: new garbage truck, $270,000. Future lease vehicles, $350,000. Garbage truck compact insert for the small truck, $20,000. Police station security cameras, $65,000. Design for bulletproof barrier and storefront closure for city officials at 212 Delaware Street, $20,800. Total redesign of city office, $46,100.
So one of the first things is, I'm sorry, are we not there? Oh, sorry.
Be further resolved, the city administrator is authorized to take such further actions and execute such agreements that are necessary to implement the foregoing resolution. Any questions now?
Sorry about that. I did a little important thing at the end. So right up in the third paragraph, whereas blah, 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 totaling 725,800, but our total is 771,900. So I don't know if that's a typo.
A typo.
If we go back to,
That, if I think if you added the difference, I think the difference is the 46,000, correct?
yeah, it is.
Right.
So when you mentioned at our meeting, the last meeting we had, was that part of what you mentioned? I don't recall.
I did mention the two different design options, and I double checked with Layla to see if we did the 46-1, if that would include doing the 20,800, and it would not. It would have to be done separately.
Any other questions? Mr. Dyke?
Yeah, so just to be clear, the 20,800 is just for the design of the barrier storefront enclosure, just the design, no construction at all,
Correct.
right? And then the 46,000 is a total redesign of the city office, which I would assume includes building, plumbing, mechanical, and ADA plans.
It would include reevaluating the entire space, from mechanicals to everything.
So these aren't actually doing anything. They're just studying doing something.
Correct.
I think more than studying, I think what we're paying here is for the plans to actually do what we want.
Yeah, I
You're
mean,
paying
yeah,
for
the plans to do it. It's to say, okay, it's the plans to do it and say, here's what it's going to cost. So it's gonna cost, you know, almost $67,000 to come back and say, okay, to do, you're gonna spend 67 and we're gonna tell you how much you're gonna spend to totally redo the whole building. So, I mean, you know, it's basically something that you had all actually said that if you didn't have this information, how could you make, I believe at least a couple of you said, how can you make a decision on a complex? So now we're saying, here, we're gonna give you the ability to make that decision. And make this building as much as possible a safe building.
And would that also modernize it for the workforce? I mean,
It would, well, yeah, you would, as best you could with the space that you have. I mean, realize, realize that if you're gonna do this, and we've had conversations with Layla to do this, you're potentially looking at putting outside entrances in various enclosed offices so that you can actually be safe in that building. It's gonna require a huge renovation. To your point about making it more technological, I mean, yeah, sure, we would be able to rewire the building and put some more technology in it, but I'm not sure that you would gain from that a whole lot in the big picture. But that's what this will tell you.
any follow?
Nope, thank you.
I think it's a good bet. I mean, what we're doing is we're hedging against, we have money in the bank. We need police cars, we need a trash truck. We need the compactor, evidently the little truck's working pretty well, but it just doesn't hold enough. And like Mr. Martel said, we have asked for the study to be done to see what has to be done to 220 Delaware Street to make it work. So like I said, all the other ones is a nice hedge against inflation.
Do we need to change that number in the third paragraph? That's just a typo. Do we need?
It's a typo. It is 771.
Yes. 771, 900.
Go ahead and make a motion for that, Ms. Leary, and we change that.
Motion to
Amend.
amend the 725, 800 to 771, 900.
All in favor of the amendment? All in favor of the resolution? Aye. On the agenda,
The playground.
the playground.
And, task forces.
Okay, resolution 2023-09, a resolution to approve the purchase of certain playground equipment using state provided funding not to exceed $160,000. Motion to read the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Whereas the city council adopted resolution 2022-18, establishing a playground committee for the purpose of researching the feasibility of the design, financing the construction of a newly rented children's playground at Battery Park. And whereas the playground committee has identified certain playground equipment manufactured by company and listed on Exhibit A attached to hereto and incorporated herein by reference to equipment. As specified equipment is recommends the city purchases for phase 1 of Battery Park Playground resolutions. Whereas state funding totaling $160,000, including the grant funding of $160,000 from Delaware Land and Water Conservation Trust Fund, prudent to 30 Delaware C 5423 Outdoor Recreation Parks Trails Program or programs has been secured by the city to fund the purchase of the equipment and to install a handicap accessible pathway to the playground. Whereas the installation of the equipment and the pathway must be affirmed consent to by the trustees of Newcastle Commons, trustees, to control the management and operation of Battery Park. Whereas the purchase of the equipment with state funding requires full compliance with state procedure guidelines set forth in Title 29, Chapter 69 of the Delaware Code. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that City Council that by the City Council that the purchase of the equipment identified in Exhibit A attached to hereto manufactured by Copan and Company is approved and subject to the following conditions. Written confirmation from the trustees of their consent to install or installation of the equipment to be renovated to renovate the Battery Park Playground. Execution of a memorandum of understanding with the trustees outlining each party's responsibility with respect to the location, repairs, maintenance, and replacement of equipment and pathway. Execution of a grant agreement with the state of Delaware Department of Natural Resources, Environmental Control, Division of Parks, Recreation in form and substance acceptable to the city solicitor, city administrator relating to $60,000 of corporate program grants, and confirm from the state of Delaware Office of Management and Budget that the equipment, the necessary labor to install the same may be purchased from the Copan Company without public bidding. Total cost of the purchase of the equipment may not exceed $100,000. Total cost of the installation of the pathway may not exceed $60,000. Be it further resolved that such any of the foregoing conditions not satisfied, no further action to purchase or install either equipment or pathway shall take place without further consent of City Council. Be it further resolved, the city administrator is authorized to take such actions to execute such agreements and memorandums of understanding as are necessary to implement the foregoing resolution. I sit on the committee. I see Suzanne in the back, and if she wants to jump in, she can. But basically, what this is all about is the money's here, the equipment's sitting there. We're still working some legalities out of the trust, but we're losing money too, because if you can correct me if I'm wrong, costs are going up. And we've agreed so far with this, the money's there. We just want a commitment from council saying, yes, go ahead and start, the process of purchase equipment. Any questions from council? You all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Mr. Capelli, you're gonna work that out with the trust now with the legalities and everything, but we.
Right. Were you going to provide the list, the actual list at this point? That was part of what? Okay, what you were going to discuss the specifics, I thought, of that list. So, okay, if you're happy with what that, I was under the impression you were going to be here tonight to actually review that. I'll review it with you and provided it's exactly what we discussed with council. And
Well, if anything, the list has been provided, in my understanding, but anything we're going to take, there's going to be some things removed, correct?
It all depends on.
Right, we're just not going to add anything. So everything that's been presented to council. Right. All right. And lastly, council discussion motion on resolution 2023-10, a resolution approving a request for the extension of Steve Rise 11 task force. And this is from Councilperson Zoller. And if you want to read it, go ahead. My mouth is dry.
Thank you. Okay. Resolution 2023-10, a resolution extending the term of the temporary task force of citizens to research existing information concerning the impact of sea level rise on the city of Newcastle. Whereas City Council adopted Resolution 2022-04, a resolution establishing a temporary task force of citizens to research existing information concerning the impact of sea level rise on the city of Newcastle and to prepare remediation recommendations. And whereas Resolution 2022-04 provided that the task force shall exist as a public body for a period ending April 30th, 2023, unless otherwise extended by City Council. And whereas the task force continues to study issues affecting the city relating to sea level rise and means of mitigating the negative effects of same. And whereas the task force requires additional time to complete such work and prepare a final report and recommendations to city council. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved by city council that the term of the temporary task force established for the purpose of researching available information concerning the impact of sea level rise on the city of Newcastle and making recommendations to the city of Newcastle towards the furtherance of these goals and strategies is hereby extended until October 31st, 2023. Be it further resolved that the structure and goals of this task force shall be as follows. The task force shall be composed of no fewer than 5 and no more than 9 residents of the city of Newcastle to be appointed by the city council.
Any questions? I just got a quick one. I don't want to put you on the spot, but any updates, anything going along or?
Well, the largest possible grant and study is from the division of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And they have agreed to do what they call a preliminary investigation, and I forget what the rest of the acronym is, but in other words, to see if the city qualifies for this program. And they've hired a firm to do this. And the reasons things got delayed is our application to this program was made, I think, in August or early September, which some of you may know, September 30th is the end of the federal fiscal year. And as per usual in recent times, Congress hadn't passed a budget yet and put all federal programs on a continuing resolution, which limits committing money to new programs or new expenditures. And so we're all to shake down where they could even agree to hire the company to do the investigation to see if it qualifies. So that's just gotten started in the last month. And that study, we hope to get the report sometime next year, but that's when this was going to run out. So clearly they need some more time. We'll see where it goes after that.
All right.
Just a point of order, Mr. President. I don't think we made a motion to read that, so I'll make that motion to read it.
Second.
Okay. Oh, we did.
I don't think we did.
Fair enough for it.
So if anybody, I mean, I've been attending the meetings. They're working, they're also doing things like gathering information, and they're going to be consulting with someone from the Delaware Sea Grant Program at their meeting later this month about providing public information to the public about what they can do to protect their own properties beyond what, the larger project which the city might undertake. And they're planning to hold community meetings to tell, to share that information with people. So
I commend the Sea Level Rise Committee because you've been on a very forward trajectory ever since you started.
And just to address the issue that was raised earlier in public comments, the original resolution establishing this committee provided that they would choose their own chair. And so it's not up to council to decide that the chair should be replaced after a year. That would be up to the task force itself.
No term limit. That's thankless.
Right. And since it's a time limited commission, it's not like it's an ongoing operation.
Any other questions? All in favor of resolution 2023-10? Aye. Ayes have it.
Making motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.